I ever read that. Haven't you had that experience? You're in prayer. Now, and so for some of us it's a disadvantage because, we don't understand Arabic. Let's just be honest, right? We don't understand Arabic. When I was younger, I used to use that as a referendum on your faith. I was immature. Some of the biggest fools on the earth speak fluent Arabic. Fluent Arabic. Some of them are hafiz of Quran and they're fools. May Allah protect us from that. May He protect us from that, inshallah. So I'm not saying that as a referendum on your faith. What I'm saying is, you may not know it, but when you hear that surah you perk up, right? Even if the only surah you know is Ahad, that's the only one, Ikhlas. If that's the only surah you know, when the Imam recites it, wow, you light up. When the Imam recites Al-Fatiha, you light up, right? And listen, so imagine every time you come to prayer, imagine having that constant feeling of elation that you get when the few surahs that you understand are recited. Right? Now, when you read the Quran during Ramadan, don't you come across a verse, although you've read it every year since you've been a Muslim, the last 30 years? Don't you come across a verse and you're like, wow, I never looked at it like that. I never understood it like that. That's a safe space. That's a safe space for your mind and a safe space for your soul. And that's not temporary. That's not fleeting. That's sustainable. So after Abraham is guided to this wonderful understanding of La ilaha illallah, he understands it. He makes a prayer because he wants this for everyone. He wants everyone to come to this place because he came to a place that he was safe in his mind and his soul. Then Allah says, وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ قَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَعِيلَ رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ سَمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And remember, Abraham and Ismail raised the foundations of the house, and they made a dua. O Allah, accept this service from us, for thou art hearing and knowing. Yarfa'u means to raise up. وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَعِيلَ قَوَاعِدَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَعِيلَ. They raised up the foundations for the house. Now, when you look at this and you analyze it, the word for foundation of the house, qawa'id, is very similar, and it finds its origin in the word for grammar. Grammar. When I study Arabic grammar, it's qawa'id. That's the qawa'id. That's the grammar. And there's different parts of the grammar. But why is grammar important? Grammar is the rules of language, isn't it? That's what grammar is. And language is what you think with. We've said it so many times, it's a cliche now. You think with words. And we've all heard it said over and over again, if you don't believe that you think with words, I'm going to be quiet and I want you to think without using a word. So you think with words. But if you think with words with no grammar, you can't communicate anything. You don't know if I'm asking you a question or giving you a command. You don't know if I'm sharing with you one thought or two thoughts. You don't know what the subject is, the object is. I can't communicate to you clearly without grammar. So if Abraham arrived at Tawheed through his engaging the creation with his mind, as we talked about in Jummah 2 weeks ago, and challenged the established norms of thinking of his time. And we stopped when he challenged the man who thought he was God, right? But we didn't finish that he also challenged man's worship of the creation that he couldn't touch, the moon and the sun. See, first he took the man out there and said, you change the order. You make the sun. Remember? The man said, I cause life and death. Abraham said, my Lord caused life and death. He said, I cause life and death. Abraham said, my Lord is the one that caused the sun to rise from the east and set in the west. You reverse the order. Remember that discussion? So Abraham takes him out, away from those things that are in our material graphs. But even once we go up there, we start to look up there, and it's so awe-inspiring, we even start to worship that. So Abraham challenged that. He challenged the worship of the star. He challenged the worship of the moon. He challenged the worship of the sun. And from challenging them, he concluded that no, none of them are permanent. All of them will not last. You get it now? They will not last. So God says to the unbelievers, I will let them enjoy their pleasure for a while. I will let them enjoy it for a while, but it's not consistent. It will not last. Right? So Abraham challenges this, and from challenging it, he comes to a perfect grammar, a perfect logic in the language he's thinking with. And that perfect logic is there's nothing worthy of worship except the one that originated the heavens and the earth, and that's who I'm going to give my life to. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. But he didn't leave it there. What did he do? Qawaid al-bayt. He rolls up. Yarfa'u. Qawaid al-bayt. He rolls up the foundation of the house. Now, many of us, when we see the Kaaba, we see a building. And when we think about the foundation of the house, we think about the pebbles and the rocks that were used to build the foundation of the Kaaba. But I'm going to suggest to you that this verse is also metaphorically referring to the foundation of man's thinking. They raised up the foundation of man's thinking. The Kaaba is a symbol for us. Abraham left it as a symbol. And we all turn to it, right? We all turn to it, right? But that symbol is a reminder to us. It reminds us of Abraham. It reminds us of the human heart, the black stone. That's why we kiss it. Right? That black stone sitting in that house. That black stone represents the heart of the human being, his pure, good human heart. Take the heart out of the body, it turns black. The signs are all there. You take the heart out of the body, it dies and it turns black. Right? So we kiss it and we circle it. It stands there as a reminder to us that if you want to order your thinking and you want to have productive thinking, you have to engage the creation, but engage the creation understanding that there's one God that made the whole creation. And by serving and worshiping him and following the laws, the grammar he gave you to govern your social life, the grammar he gave you to govern your intellectual life, the grammar he gave you to govern your behavior, you follow all these grammars, you will have a productive thinking and you will have a life that's enduring. And if you don't, you search for the star, and when that fades, you search for these are ideas and aspirations and things you give your life to. You give your life to the star and it's going to fade. You give your life to the moon and it's going to fade. You meet people like this every week. They're into something new. There's some new idea, some new philosophy, some new way of looking at the world. Well, when you come to understand the oneness of God and you're guided to the Quran, it sustains you. It's safe. And you can spend the rest of your life exploring the signs that Allah has put inside it, and you can die and pass your work on to your children, and they will work on it for their whole life, and they'll pass it on, because the Quran is unfolding to us, and we will never exhaust the knowledge that's in the Quran. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi al-kareem Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. Dear beloved Muslims, as we move forward after our second Eid, this Eid, the focus is on the whole of humanity. The Eid al-Fitr, the focus is on the success of the individual in completing his fast. The Eid al-Adha comes after Arafah, and the emphasis is on the success of humanity. After you get yourself straight, after we get ourselves straight as individuals, we have to work on the collective. We have to work on the collective, because when we have to live together as communities. Man can't get away from it. That's how God made us. And we share space. So once we get ourselves right, we work on correcting our shared space, so that when we come to our shared space, that shared space promotes and encourages the progress of everyone involved. You go to Hajj right now. You go to Mecca. It's not now, but a week ago. You don't see women walking behind men, and you don't see any of that. Everybody's equal in the house of God. Everybody's equal. Big sign for us. You want to see what our shared space should be like? Look and study how you conduct yourself at the house of God. And that's the collective shared space for humanity. People try to get us to put a barrier up in here. And I tell them, listen, if you don't have a barrier at God's house, in the most sacred of our rituals, Hajj, how does a mosque at 6641 Belford so much more special than the house of God, that I erect things in my mosque on 6641 Belford that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never even erected in his mosque? Huh? Do you know what that does to your shared sacred space? I tell men this all the time. You go sit behind the wall for a while. You have to try it. Even just one day there's no women in the mosque, put half the men behind the wall and leave half the men in front of the wall. And I want you to study what that does to your psyche. We call this a social experiment. I even write it up. I'll get IRB approval and everything. And I'll write a paper about it. Okay? I'll do hypotheses and everything. I'll get surveys, and we'll do our data collection. And we'll even publish in a peer-reviewed journal. What being behind the wall does to the psyche of the Muslim man. Some of you can't even fathom the idea. Yeah, well, what do you mean? What do you mean sit behind the wall? Okay, that's part of you haven't even tried the experiment. You can't even entertain the idea. Just think about that for our shared space and what implications that has for our shared space, especially